Few technical call reminders that I'd like to review before we get started. If you have any questions or comments for our speakers today, please feel free to use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Automated live transcript is available. To access it, select the option Show Subtitles or View Full Transcript. This call is being recorded and will be shared out as a resource. Finally, if you have any technical difficulties, please chat any council staff member and we will be happy to assist you. With that being said, we are so grateful that you've joined us for today's webinar, Peer Benchmarking for Community Foundations, a guided tour of CF Insights. I'll now hand it over to Dave Rosado, our Senior Advisor for Community Philanthropy, to kick us off.
Thanks so much, Jessica, and thanks everybody for joining today. As just mentioned, I'm Dave Rosado, Senior Advisor, Community Philanthropy at the Council on Foundations. I will be joined by my colleague, Hannah Watkins, Director of Membership, also with the Council, in just a little bit. But for now, what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about CF Insights, the CF Insights benchmarking platform for community foundations, including a detailed demonstration. So if anybody has any questions as we go through the demo or about anything that we talk about today, absolutely feel free to share those questions with us, and we'll be more than happy to address all of them a little bit later. So let me first show a quick snapshot of our Community Foundation membership. And in so doing, to set the table a little bit, what I'll mention too is that we brought CF Insights over to the council from Candid, where it was previously hosted just over a year ago on September 1st, 2023. And since then, it's been really great to see how much engagement with this benchmarking platform has grown. It's grown by over 50% in that time. It's been really great to see. CF Insights is a benchmarking platform specifically designed to meet the needs of community foundations. And as you see here on the slide, community foundations make up a quite sizable portion of the entire council membership at right around 45%. And so we understand and always work to provide more value to community foundations, just given how important you are to us and how important we hope to be to you all. The other thing I want to mention too is that with CF Insights, and this is something that you're going to see when I go through the demonstration of the tool, is that as more community foundations share their data and utilize the benchmarking tool, the value of that tool only grows. So as more community foundations are in there sharing their data, it just means that there's more data available to all of you who are using that tool. And given the fact that we aim to provide more value to our community foundation members, that was a big factor in informing why the council brought CF Insights over here last September, and just in service of providing, as I mentioned, more value to our community foundation members. So I'm going to say a little bit about a little more, I should say, about what CF Insights and who it's for. I'll give a demonstration of the peer benchmarking data tool. We're going to talk a little bit about the Plus membership for community foundations, which is your way of unlocking the full data, the full feature set of CF Insights. And then I suspect we'll probably have ample time for Q&A as well. So feel free, again, if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the chat. And like I mentioned, we'll make sure to address as many as we can in the time that we have together. So first, CF Insights. I'm going to take a step back here and talk a little bit about what CF Insights is and who it's for. And the idea behind it is actually quite simple. We ask, what if each community foundation could know what all community foundations collectively know? And through this benchmarking platform, which, as I mentioned, is designed specifically for community foundations, you can look up peer data to help you make tactical decisions around resource allocation, including staffing and other data points, and strategic decisions around your different donor products, and so much more. And we're going to show a few different ways that you can do that. CF Insights was built to facilitate knowledge sharing within the field through this data. All of the data is self-reported, and as you'll see when we go through, many community foundation folks, as are many that are on this call, are well connected. You have access to your own networks, your own colleagues across the field, so you can always pick up the phone and call a contact of yours if you have a particular question about something that they might be doing at their community foundation. that could inform what you're doing at your community foundation. But whenever I give a demonstration of a tool like this, um, the community foundation is always quite surprised at how many other peers there are across the country that operate quite similarly to their own foundation that they just didn't know that they didn't know about. They didn't know that they existed. They didn't know that they were so similar to them. So that's the power of this tool, is to help you identify the peers that could inform some tactical shift or some strategic shift at your foundation, or at least help you answer questions that you might have about the impact of such a tactical shift or a strategic shift. Um, the other thing I want to mention about this as well is that, with access to so much peer data, you might look at peers that you've never been in contact with before. And that is part of why we're here, right? So if there's somebody that you don't know, and you're curious to ask them any questions, we are here to get you connected to them, so that you can be in conversation with each other and dig deeper than what the data might tell you, that the data that you'll find on the website might tell you. All right. So this is just a sampling of some of the data points that are available on the platform. There are actually more than a couple hundred data points that speak to the operations of community foundations, how they sustain their work, how they're staffed, how they're growing, what their product emphasis might be in terms of growing donor advised funds versus scholarship funds, et cetera. And this data goes back over 15 years. The platform was originally created back in 2008. The first year of data is from 2007. And so we have data from every year. A couple of hundred community foundations share their data every single year. And so we have a good sampling of community foundations that are quite representative of the broader field in terms of diversity of geography and the age of the foundation and the size of the foundation and just different operating models that you'll be able to uncover as you look up the peer data in the CF Insights platform. So again, these are just a few examples. I'm not going to go through these examples here because we're going to be able to see those, those data points and a whole lot more when we actually go into the demonstration portion of this webinar. The one thing I do want to mention here, though, is that when you are looking at peers on the platform, you can set your criteria to whatever it is that's most relevant to you. So if you want to look up community foundations that are similar to you in size, you want to limit it to only the community foundations that have a June 30 fiscal year end, because your foundation might, so that you can compare apples to apples in terms of growth trends and things like that. Other community foundations that are very focused on growing their DAF portfolios, if that's something that you're focused on, right? Let's just say that it is. You can define what those criteria are, make multiple peer groups, save those peer groups, and all and interact with them in ways that are most helpful for you. So again, I'll demonstrate all of this in just a few minutes. But while we're here, what I'm going to do is going to ask you for a small favor, and Jess, if you can post this into the chat as well. I would love for those on the call, if you're comfortable doing so, or interested in doing so, if you could just share your community foundation's just estimated asset size, right? So, it could be, rounded to the nearest million, the nearest 10 million, the nearest 50 million, whatever, depending on your size. How many staff you have, how many full-time equivalents you have, how many people are in your service area. So what is the size of the population that you serve? And just roughly the percentage of your assets that are in donor advised funds. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pluck one or two examples when we get to the demonstration portion and just use that set of data from one attendee to inform how I build a peer group. And you're going to see how that works in real time. So feel free to do that at any point over the next few minutes. And as I mentioned, I'll just choose one of the examples and we'll get to see how that works together. Let me also quickly mention here a couple more things before we go into the browser, is that you can generate your peer groups, as I mentioned on the previous slide. You can also generate some visual reports that you can then download. You could download the data behind the reports as well. So if you want to, compile different data sets and create your own custom reports for use offline, for reporting to your senior leadership or to your board. All of those features are available to you through CF Insights. But we do have a handful of, I'm going to call them prefabricated reports, just to make it easy to compile some quick groups of columns into a single into a single visual report. And I'll show how that works during the demonstration as well. And then I mentioned this before, but just to reiterate, because it is really important, virtually all of the data is self-reported. So this is data that's reported directly from community foundation staff from across the country. That gives us two advantages. So the first is that because we're not depending on 990 data, for instance, right? We're not scraping 990s to get this information. The data is more timely. It's more up to date, more current. Right now, we're in the process of collecting fiscal year 2023 data. So that data collection effort has begun. You probably have already seen that announcement a few weeks ago. I'll say a little bit more about the survey in just a second as well, in case it's something you haven't seen. But this is the mechanism that we use to collect the data that powers the benchmarking tool. And as I mentioned, it's all self-reported. So that's the first thing, is that the data is more current. The other main advantage is that it allows us to customize the survey and update it to evolve with the needs of the field. So we've been able to add, new questions over the years. We've also been able to try and, right size the survey as well. So if there are questions that we realize are less relevant to the field, or we get feedback that it's less relevant to the field, we remove those questions as well. So it's not just like, survey bloat over a long period of time. We want to make sure that it's relevant, that the burden is not too much on the field to participate in the survey, to try and encourage as many community foundations to share their data as possible. One of the main reasons for that is because it allows us to generate a financial snapshot of the field, an annual financial snapshot of the field. That snapshot is available to anyone, anywhere. You don't have to be a participant in the survey. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to log in to cof.org. It's available at the URL right on the slide. /CFInsights/results, right? cof.org/CFInsights/results. And you can go back to 2017, I believe, that 2016, I think is the first year that's available on that page. And then we have an archive of PDFs that go back to earlier years as well. So this is a snapshot of the field. It allows us to understand what some of the broader trends are over time, how the field might be growing, how the field might be evolving, what some of the key differences are between community foundations of different sizes and different geographies and different stages of their life cycle. And again, as I mentioned, the snapshot is free for anyone to access at any time. So right now, the latest snapshot that we have published is 2022. And just to repeat what I said before, we're in the process of collecting 2023 data that we hope to publish before the end of this year. So stay tuned for that. And the survey and benchmarking platform both live at data.cfinsights.org. So you can log in if you have a cof.org login. If you're not a member, if you've ever registered for a webinar or anything like that, you actually already have a login that works on data.cfinsights.org. So you can give it a try. If you log in there, if it's the first time you're logging into CF Insights, you're just going to be presented with an interstitial screen that asks you to confirm the name of your community foundation and your title. And we have admins on our side. I'm one, Jess is one, that looks through the queue every single day and just approves access to the data, because we just don't want anybody with a cof.org login to just be able to access anyone's data, right? So it's just a quick step, usually 1 or 2 days is the waiting period, depending on the length of the queue, and then you will have access to the survey platform. All right, so from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the browser. So give me 1 second here. We're sharing multiple windows in a webinar. You have to kind of move things around a little bit. So let's go ahead and switch windows here. And I think I'm sharing the right one. Let's see. Okay. I think we're good now. And let me just refresh the page to make sure I'm still logged in. Yes. Okay. Wonderful. So data.cfinsights.org. As I mentioned, if you've ever logged into cof.org, you can log into this as well. You might just have to be approved to get access, but otherwise the same password, email combination is going to work. I happen to be an administrator, so what you're going to see up here in this navigation panel is going to be slightly different when you sign in. What you're going to see are these options right here along the top. You're going to see home, my foundation, my surveys, benchmarking, and FAQ. Because we're not, unless anybody has any questions about the survey, I'm more than happy to jump into the survey. But because we're not here to talk about the survey itself, I'm going to jump right into the benchmarking tool, and I'm going to show you how that works, how to create peer groups, how to download data, and how to generate some visual reports as well. Okay, so I did see that there was a good amount of chat activity here. So I'm going to grab one of these. It looks like we have a couple of 100 million, 100 million-ish community foundations. Let's go ahead and start with that. Okay, so, all right, perfect. So, yes, around that size range and the service area around 2.5 million. Perfect. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you how this works. We're in the benchmarking section of the CF Insights database, right? The data platform. And when you're here, there's going to be basically nothing on this page, right? To start. There's nothing here. You're just going to be prompted to either visit our FAQs page so that you can um, uh, basically follow along with a series of how-to FAQ articles that actually show how to do this as well. So by the way, if you want to see how this works and sort of like follow along, if you have access to this, you can load up the FAQs page, and there's a whole section dedicated to how to use this page and how to create peer groups and how to access the data. Um, but the other thing you're going to be able to do to start is create a peer group, right? I've created a lot of peer groups as an admin, as someone who provides a lot of demonstrations and who works directly with our members to help them create peer groups for themselves. Um, you're going to be able to, you're going to see that I have just a lot of peer groups that I can load up and show you how any of those might look. But because I wanted to work with data that you're sharing in the chat to create a peer group on the fly, let's go ahead and do exactly that. So I'm going to start by clicking new peer group. And you're going to see that there's a name field, right? Um, as you probably have already gathered, you can create a lot of peer groups, right? These are all of the peer groups that I have created, that colleagues have created at any point. And so you're going to want to name them based on the context, right? That you might be operating in, right? So if there's a peer group that's based on a DAF recruitment, if there's a set of peers that are a little bit larger than your own community foundation, and you're kind of curious to see how they might have gotten to that size, and maybe it's a goal of yours, you can name it based on that and make it easy to refer to later. Whatever helps you find that peer group again when you come back to the page. The other thing I'm going to mention is that the peer groups that you save on this page are saved on the organizational level. So what that means is if you create a peer group and you leave the foundation, and then somebody just succeeds you in that role, or other folks at the community foundation need to have access to the peer groups that you have created, they will have access to the peer groups that you have created by default. So when they click this drop-down menu, they're going to see this set of peer groups, and there's going to be the name of the person who created the peer group is going to be part of the peer group name. And so, again, this is just to, help wherever there might be turnover at a community foundation, the peer groups are not going to be lost with the person whose login might no longer work, let's say, right? So let's go ahead and name the September 2024 demo. And then once you name your peer group, you're going to be able to scroll down a little bit and start adding characteristics. And what this means by, what the site means by characteristics is basically criteria, right? Like, what are your search criteria? How do you want to filter all of the data that exists on this database so that you're only displaying the peers that are most relevant to you, right? So let's start with actually, let me just say a little bit about these different options here. So once you click add characteristic, there are going to be three fields that appear. The first is peer characteristic. And if you click that drop-down menu, it's going to be a very long list of data data points. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. Then there's an operator, which will work once I select a data point. So let's go ahead and select the data point. And once you do, the operator will, it'll start working. Basically, it'll respond to the characteristic that you selected. So because I selected something that's related to time, right, the year that the data is from, it's going to say, is 2022, let's say, that's the value, is not 2022. So it'll show you data, all data except 2022 data, is 2022 or before, is 2022 or after. But if I switch to a different data field, let's look for one that has to do with that's related to dollars, then the operator is going to be, it's going to just respond to that, and it's going to be relevant to that particular data point. So in terms of dollar amount, you can try and find the community foundation by entering exactly what their asset size is, but you probably have to do a lot of trial and error to do that. It's better to just say, give me community foundations whose assets are more than this, but less than this. And then the value is just going to be whatever that upper or lower bound might be. So it could be assets are greater than 100 million, less than 150 million, for example. So let me go ahead and start adding a couple of characteristics here. And I'm going to use survey year first because I'm not interested in very old data right now. There are many use cases for older data if you want to run longitudinal reports or anything like that. But for the purposes of this demonstration and this snapshot here, we're just going to go ahead and pull in any data that was entered in the last 2 years, okay? We have 2022 data that we collected last year, and then 2021 data that we collected 2 years ago. And we're in the process of collecting 2023 data. So actually anytime in the last 3 years, because we might have some 2023 data as well. So survey year is on or after 2021. I'm going to pause right there and click show results. And what's going to happen is underneath this results subheader here, there's going to be a table that generates in roughly half a second. It's very fast. And it's just going to show a listing. It's actually a few 2024s as well, because we have some community foundations whose survey years, whose fiscal years end in June or March or even January. So they were already capable of showing 2024 data with us. There's going to be a list of community foundations by name. It's going to be in alpha, basically in reverse chronological order, and then alpha order. So this is all 2024 in alpha order here, and then 2023 in alphabetical order, and then 2022. If I scroll down enough, let me make it so that it displays all the hits. And as I scroll all the way down, you're going to see a lot more 2021, 2022. All right. So because the only data point that I asked for, or I should say based my search on, was the year, that's the only data point it's displaying. It's not going to show any other data point, right? But one way to add additional columns here so that you can see other data points on the community foundations that are listed is to add another characteristic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the platform, give me foundations who have data from 2021 or later, and whose total assets are greater than, I'm going to use the $100 million example. I'm going to say $70 million up to 100, I'm going to say $150 million, and then we could always narrow further. A couple things to mention here. One is that you can keep adding characteristics as long as you want. You can add 20, 30, 40 characteristics if you really wanted to, and really land on a set of peers that meet a very narrow definition of who your relevant peers are, right? Or you can start with a wider net, see what the site returns, and then start to to refine the list so that you can get to that list of peers that are most relevant to you. The other thing I'm going to mention, going back to this here, and let me open up a new characteristic to show you. This list is long, right? There's a couple hundred data points here. If you're not, living and breathing this data set all the time, I'm looking at this all the time, so I practically remember the order of all the data points here. it's going to be hard to find what you're looking for, right? So what you can do is you can actually do a type ahead here and anywhere else where there might be a drop-down menu. So that's why, as you saw me type, you saw that it limited the characteristics to only those that say total foundation, right? So it could be total foundation gifts, total foundation funds, total foundation grants, and so on. But as I delete that text, then you get that entire list again. If you want average fund size, you can type that in and it'll limit it to just average fund size. But let me remove that for now. And let me click show results again. I want to show you how it looks when you add another column. So I clicked show results and now we have 167, right? So this is 167 community foundations that have participated at least once and probably more than once for most of them between 2021 up to 2024, whose assets are, and I think I put greater than twice, so that's part of it. Yeah, the greater, I just saw that there's a foundation here that's 621 million, which is not what we were looking for. So let me fix that. Greater than 70 million, less than 150. Okay. All right. So backing up just a little bit, now we have the foundations that are above 70 and below 150, right? So now we have 43, which makes more sense to me. These are the ones that are within that narrow band, that narrow asset size band, that have taken the survey at least once, 2021, 2022, 23, 24. And it's only showing, again, the foundations that are between those two numbers in terms of asset size, right? So they have to have at least 70 million and $1 in assets, or at most 149 million 999 in assets. So that's one way to add additional columns to this table, right? You can continue to add characteristics. You can say we need at least this many staff, at least this proportion of DAF assets, which I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the chat and look up the other data points here. Okay, so we have 10 employees. All right, so we have 5 employees up to 10 employees, 2.5 million in service area, and a lot of DApps, right? So at least 60% up to 80% in DApps. Okay, so that's one way to add other columns here, right? Continue to add characteristics. The other way is to click this metrics button. And when you click this metrics button, you're going to be able to, from this pop-up window, you're going to be able to add other data points without filtering anybody out of your peer group, right? So you don't have to, make up a characteristic or a criteria to bring in data points just because you want to see them, right? Without narrowing your data set. So I'm going to pull in a couple of different data points here and I'll pull in state, I'll pull in fiscal year end. I'm going to pull in operating expenses for that year, and then I'm going to click apply. And once you click apply, now you have additional data points in your table, okay? And again, I did not narrow my search at all, which I'm about to do. So that's a quick way to add other columns of data, again, without removing anybody from your peer group. But let's follow through with the other data points that are here. I saw the range of FTEs. So let's say, I'll make this, I'll keep this fairly wide. I'm going to say that we want foundations with at least 4 FTEs, let's say, right? So I'm not going to create a range here. It'll just be 5 and up in terms of how many FTEs. But what I will do is set a floor for donor advised fund assets, right? So let's see what happens here. We got 2 examples in the chat of community foundations with, I think it was like 62% or something and 82%, or 60 something percent, 80 something percent. So let's look for the foundations that have at least 40% of their assets in donor advised funds. Now I'm going to show results, probably only going to get a handful here. So now we have 7. Now these are the foundations that meet all those criteria. They have more than 4 FTEs, more than 4 full-time equivalents, and have at least 40% of their funds, 40% of their assets in donor advised funds. And you can see what that percentage is. So for Indian River in Florida, it's 77%. For the Alleghenies in Pennsylvania, it's 72%. So on Parasol Tahoe, 53%, a little under 54% rather, and so on. So now we have our peer group here. You're going to see the Parasol Tahoe is actually listed 3 times because they took the survey in 21, 22, and 23. So they're actually listed 3 times because I told the database, give me 2021 data or later, and they just happen to share the data 3 times, right? They take the survey every year. For the other ones, it's not necessarily the case that they didn't take the survey every year. Just scanning this list of names, I know for a fact that pretty much all of these do. It's just that because I defined a fairly narrow band of FTE total, DAF percentage, asset size, right? They might not have been in that range in 2022, for example, right? So maybe Alleghenies, they might have been larger than 130 in 2022 and then dropped in 2023, for example. So that's why we don't have them for 2022, but they take the survey every year, for example. Um, if you want to limit this table to only show the latest data, right? Maybe you don't want Parasol Tahoe listed 3 times. There is a checkbox that allows you to do just that. Show only most recent for each foundation. I'm going to go ahead and click show results again, and we're going to have, what is it, 4 or 5? 4 foundations, right? So meeting those very narrow criteria, I would venture a guess to say that the DAF assets are going to be that's the big limiter here. These are foundations that have at least 40% of their assets in DApps, right? So these are going to be the most relevant to you. But maybe you want to look up foundations, you want to look up rather you want to work with a larger group of peers, right? Maybe 4 is too few. You can eliminate one of the criteria and click show results again. And now we have 26, right? So as suspected, I thought that the 40% probably on the high side. So now we have all these foundations that meet all those criteria. They have less than 40% of their assets are in dApps, but maybe you still want to know how much of their assets are in dApps, right? Just because we remove the criteria doesn't mean you're not interested in knowing how much of their portfolio happens to be in donor advised funds. So you can bring that data point back in by clicking metrics and going back and selecting that data point and clicking apply. So we've got Southern Indiana, 6%. We've got, we've got Muncie and Delaware County, also in Indiana, coincidentally, 5%. Here's one in Wisconsin, also 5%, right? The Community Foundation of Southern Wisconsin. And this is also instructive, right? So you could see, the ponderance of community foundations in that asset size range that actually have 40 or more percent of their assets in dApps versus those that do not. So it's just something that can occur to you as you're looking at this data. You can continue to add more metrics. There's no limit to the number of metrics that you can add. So, if you were patient enough and wanted to add every single column we have here, you're basically performing just a full download of all of the data that we have. We also provide a handful of groups of data, and it's a little awkward to say, a handful of data sets, metric sets, right? So there are multiple columns that you might want to pull in. A good example of this might be staffing by function. We have the FTE total. Maybe you want to know how many of them are in finance, how many of them are in programs, how many of them are in technology, right? How many of them are in development? You can click this here. You could either go through and add them individually, right? Add new metric and then add finance. Add new metric and then add development. But that's going to take you a little bit of time. But if you click staffing by function, instantly all of those columns are added at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and click apply again. And now we have all their full staff breakdown in many cases, right? And actually in every case, yeah. So you could see for those with very few staff, how much staff might be split between different functions. There might be some part-timers in there, that kind of thing. So you're able to see exactly how their staffing is allocated. And you can go through and explore and click several other of these metrics there and bring them in as well. And be able to really generate a quite detailed report of how you compare with these different community foundations along these different metrics. Uh, One thing here is that, as you could probably tell, right, this data is not, it's not interactive on the page, right? You can't sort, you can't, um, you can't filter maybe, right? Like maybe you want to, remove one of these peers here because they're not relevant to you. You could do something like that with the criteria. You could say, you don't want to see Community Foundation for Mississippi. You can put, and name is not Community Foundation for Mississippi, for instance. But you could also download this to Excel. So if you click this here, and I don't want to do too much like jumping around different windows, but you could probably, imagine what I'm describing here. You could just download this to an Excel file. It will generate a file that looks at pretty much exactly what it looks like here. It's just going to be in raw Excel format. And you'll be able to generate charts. You'll be able to, run pivot tables or calculations, run ratios, and use that for, internal purposes to report to your leadership team or your board. And then the last thing I want to mention on this page, and I would love to pause and see if we have, I think I saw a little bit of chat activity, so I'll pause and maybe take a couple questions here if there's anything that might be unclear. At the bottom of this page are a handful of charts. Um, as I mentioned earlier, these are fairly prefabricated. So by that I mean they're going to show only the data they're going to show, right? So this is assets by product among peers, and these are the different fund types that it's showing: agency endowments, designated, donor advised, field of interest, and so on, right? The other thing that's a little bit limited about this is that some of the charts, for the purposes of rendering properly on the page, only support so many peers, and there'll be a message telling you whether or not it's showing all of your peers. So in this instance, because I think it's 26 peers, it's only showing 10. What you could do is you could export the data from this chart into Excel as well and just regenerate it into an Excel file, in the Excel file offline. So you can see the stacked bar chart for all 26 peers by downloading the data to an Excel and generating the chart offline. But this is a quick reference to just show, how many, some proportionality of donor advised fund assets and designated and so on. Um, you can also track growth over time in a couple of different metrics, so assets and gifts and grants over time. There's funds per FTE, so you can see your relative staff capacity or staff capacity relative to the size of your portfolio relative to peers, right? So this is, how many funds are at the foundation per employee of the foundation. And again, if you want to export the data to an Excel file, you can do that as well. There's just a handful of these charts, but a lot of the functionality is actually up here, because you can pull in whatever data points you want, then you can download them for use offline, and you can generate charts just like this, with your own color scheme, with additional detail, or however is most relevant to you for the conversation that you might be having internally at your foundation. So that is a demonstration of the tool. I'm gonna pause really quickly and see if there are any questions here. So, oh yes, thank you, Denise. You caught the second operator issue. Yeah. Um, yeah, and we spoke a little bit to which years it's going to show. It really will depend. The question was, will it only show the most recent survey years, or will you be able to download data from previous years? That's all based on this checkbox. So if you click this checkbox, it's only going to show the most recent data that community foundation may have submitted. So if the last time they took the survey was in 2021 or later, it's just going to show that year. But if I take this and put it all the way back to 2007 and uncheck this, you're going to see it's going to basically show hundreds of hits, right? So you're going to be able to go all the way back to 2007, 2008 for foundations that met those criteria. And it's a quick way to run longitudinal reports. It's a quick way to show foundations how long it takes them to grow out of a range, if that makes sense, right? So if you're looking to see this kind of show growth rates of community foundations, you could see how long it took them to grow from the bottom of your range to beyond the top of your range, right? As a way to sort of test how quickly they might have grown versus how quickly you might be growing. Just to name one example. So there's a way to do that. Um, and Bill asks a question. Great question. Thank you for that. Yeah. Can you see the percentage of assets that are endowed versus pass through? Yes. Yes, you can do that. Um, you can do that. Any data point you can either add as a characteristic or you can just pull it in as a metric. So let's do that. We have a metric, endowed assets, and also just, yeah, we have endowed, sorry. I think there's a space. There you go. Endowed, non-endowed, and we also have quasi-endowed, which are functionally endowed. But we did split them out. And if I scroll all the way to the right, you're going to see endowed, non-endowed, quasi-endowed, right? And so you can see also, right, like, if you want to compare yourself to a community foundation, especially if you're interested in growth, or, maybe thinking about admin fees, which by the way, we also have admin fees here. In terms of how much of your revenue is coming from admin fees, I should say, you could start to look at foundations that are maybe as concentrated in endowed funds as you are, right? Or might be as pass-through heavy as you are, right? So absolutely, you can absolutely do that. All right, I'll take one more question before. Okay, so Denise, thank you for that question. Yes, we're going to go into cost in just a second, but let me first speak to the response rate. So the response rate for the survey, we typically get about a quarter of the field take the survey, right? So there's roughly 800 to 900 community foundations in the United States. We get something like 200 or so take the survey every year. There is a lot of overlap from year to year. So it's quite consistent over time in terms of how many, which community foundations happen to be in the set, which is great for the purposes of longitudinal comparisons. But we also get a handful of new community foundations that take the survey every year. And then occasionally some foundations might skip a year, or drop off the set in a particular year. Um, yes, to answer your question, about a quarter of the field, and I would say 80 to 85% of that, it's the same foundations every year. And then it's the other 15, 20% of the survey sample that's kind of transitioning and transitioning out of the set. All right, so let me jump back into the slide deck. We're going to talk about, here we go. All right, so then we're going to talk about Plus membership. So there was a question about price. So when we brought CF Insights over from Candid last year, we also launched our Plus membership offering for community foundations. The Plus membership offering right now is basically CF Insights, right? So you get unlimited access to all of that data, the tool, unlimited peer groups. The peer groups are saved on the org level. You can download as many times as you want. I don't think I mentioned that yet, but in terms of the number of Excel files you can generate, there's no limit. So you can just download all these different reports and use that data offline. No limit to that. No limit to the number of folks at the foundation who can log into it. So you can have a login for everybody if if that's something you want to do, so that different folks at the foundation can create their own peer groups, right, to save to the org account. All of that is available, as I mentioned. No limit to any of that. You can create and download those data sets. You also get access to us really as a team, right? So you can reach out and ask for a connection with a peer, right? You found a peer who was really interesting to you in terms of the data that you were able to find on them. You want to ask them some questions about something that they have done. We can connect you with them. We do that all the time. We've never gotten a no from a community foundation. Nobody's ever said no, not interested in talking to one of my peers. That's never happened. So we can help make that connection for you. And if you have any questions about the data, you want help contextualizing the data, right? So you might have a question about the so what of it, right? How do I read this data? What does this actually mean for our community foundation? we will help you do that as well. Bring in some context informed by broader trends that are happening in the field, help with any definitional questions, help with contextualizing it just in terms of what the data might mean for you, your individual community foundation, and all of that. You can reach out to us anytime. The other thing that's included in Plus membership is this is just an example, but we also create dashboards for you. So what I mean by this is it's basically a compilation of several different visual reports that compare you with up to 5 peers of your choosing. That is a deliverable that we send to you as a report that you can then share with your leadership team and your board, right? Really good use case for this is, to include it in a board packet or something like that. Many times community foundations will, when they request one of these, they'll request a new one every year, right? You're comparing yourself with your group of 5 community foundations. You want to see how you evolve in relation to them, right? So, we'll continue to regenerate it with new data. Maybe a peer becomes less relevant to you over time. We'll help you identify a replacement for that peer. At the beginning of this process, we help you identify who your peers even are. So if you don't know who to compare to, we will help you find out who those peers might be, all based on the questions that you might be, asking, might be, engaging with internally at your community foundation. We'll use that as guidance to help you find the peers that are most relevant to you. It's also customizable, right? So there might be metrics that you're interested in that's not part of this templated slide that we happen to be looking at. We can bring some of those data in. Of course, just based on whether or not it's available through CF Insights, right? So as long as it's a CF Insights data point, we're more than happy to bring it in. We also share some context about this as well. So we won't just send this over to you with no context. We'll send just a few bullet points of things that occur to us as we're putting this together. We might include an explanation about a community foundation if they happen to be an outlier in one chart, but not the rest. There might be some context behind that. We'll try to bring that in. And this is included with Plus membership. There's not an additional fee for it. It's just, on request. You email us to say, would love to have a dashboard. Let's get that process started. We'll help you identify who those peers are and help you along the way. And the last thing I'll mention too about this, it's a great way to get started if you're overwhelmed by all of the data on the dashboard, because there is a template, there is a standard, even though it is customizable. So if you don't even know where to start, we generate one of these for you, and it's a great way to just kind of see how you compare with a handful of your peers. And it will no doubt inspire some additional questions that we can then help you answer with additional data. Okay, so here is the price chart. This is also on our website. The next slide is gonna be all links. So this will be available on the first link that you'll see on the next slide. But this is the pricing chart for Community Foundation membership in general. That's what this is, right? So this is what you're already paying for the base council membership, depending on what your management and general expenses are, right? So you're going to be within one of these ranges. It's this number plus this number, right? So if you happen to pay 4,000 for the Council on Foundations membership, then it's an additional $1,000 to get access to CF Insights, right? So the total price for everything would be $5,000. And so the range here is from 500 for CF Insights, right? The add-on, up to 7,000. And one of the things that we were able to do when we brought this over from Candid, I don't know if anybody's familiar with what the pricing was there, but we were able to lower the price of this across the entire board. The range, it started at 1,000, it went up to, I think it was 12,500, or it was 12,000 even. But either way, it was at least $12,000. That was the highest range, but it's come down to 7, and the lowest price has been cut in half. So depending on where you are, that's what it costs to gain access to CF Insights. And here are a bunch of links. These are helpful links to learn more about CF Insights. Really, if you just go to cof.org/CF Insights, it'll take you to everything else on the slide. So you can start there and you can find anything else that's related to CF Insights, no problem. So information about CF Insights. You can see all of our publications going back to when CF Insights was, was created and launched back in 2008, including the annual survey results. You can go to the survey results page and see the latest data that we have. We have some toolkits that I think that's going to be the topic for another webinar, but there are some toolkits that allow you to perform a deep dive into your individual community foundation's revenue model. We will no doubt have a webinar about those at a different date, but you can see what those are and how to use those from that link there. And then, of course, what I demonstrated today, the survey and benchmarking site, data.cfinsights.org. But if you haven't heard yet, or if you are the person who would be filling out the survey, or at least can share this link with the person who would be filling out the survey, who would be sharing, asset size, asset breakdown by product, number of staff members, all those kinds of things. It would be really wonderful to get as many community foundations in the set as possible by October 10th, so a little bit under a month to go. As I mentioned, you don't have to be a member to take the survey. You don't have to be a member of the council. You don't have to be, you don't have to have a plus membership, paid access to CF Insights to take the survey. It's our way of informing the entire field with an annual snapshot. So you're contributing to that. So hopefully, we get more community foundations to complete it. So I'm going to go to the next slide here, and then I'll stop sharing in just a second. But these are 2 email addresses that you can reach out to for questions about CF Insights specifically, or the Plus membership even, and then membership@cof.org. You can ask about the Plus membership or anything related to membership, of course. And so I will stop sharing here. Happy to go back to any slides if anybody wants to see anything again. And then I will ask Hannah to join me on screen, and we will take any questions that you all have. I do see that there are a few questions here. Okay, so yes, Bill, just yeah, we did address that. So yeah, you can have endowed versus pass-through funds, quasi-endowed. That's all available on the sites. We have the typical response rate, and then we also have the cost. Let's see. Oh, Kaylee. Yes, Kaylee. Question. So how do you know you are Plus membership? Hannah, I don't know if you want to jump in and say anything more about this, but I would just say you can always ask us and we'll let you know if you have Plus membership. The other way that you can tell if you log into data.cfinsights.org and go to the benchmarking section rather that I demonstrated, there's going to be a message on the page that will ask you to upgrade to Plus membership to get full access to everything. That's one way if you want to check it out on your own.
Yeah, Kaylee, I echo Dave, and I'd say if you want to confirm, you can definitely reach out to us at membership and we can confirm that for you. Otherwise, it's not something that's going to show up on your record. So to say, like saying I'm a Plus member, that's something that we're working to do in the future. But the other confirmation is just that any payment that you would have had would have confirmed in receipt of that payment.
Thanks, Hannah, and thanks, Kaylee. Yeah, feel free to share any other questions. Okay, looks like, yeah, we have another question. Yeah, so Denise, yeah, happy to share the cost chart again. Let me pull that back up here and then I'll share it. Actually, while I'm doing that, Hannah, can I maybe ask you to speak a little bit about the proration option? I know that we have the anniversary date that sort of dictates when you're going to renew your council membership, but you don't have to wait for your next council anniversary to add Plus membership. So yeah, Hannah, if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the link I included also has the same information to that chart. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can see your membership contribution. And also, yeah, Dave is right. You don't have to wait to sign up for CF Insights. The way that the Plus membership add-on is created is so that it will attach to your current council membership and it will mirror your anniversary date. So like Dave said, you don't have to wait until your membership is up to renewal in order to join. For instance, you can join now, and what we will do is prorate your membership, so you're just paying for those months that you do have it, and it will mirror, again, to match up with your council anniversary date. And then at your time of renewal, you'll see an option on your membership invoice where it says, I'd like to upgrade to Plus membership, and you just check a box, and then you also include your dues amount along with your council membership renewal payment. And from there, we will get that set up on your account and notify Dave that you signed up, and he'll reach out to you with additional information on how you can get started with your benefits.
Excellent. Thanks, Hannah. And yeah, I should mention that as well. You know, whenever there's a new Plus member, we do offer a one-on-one demo, right? So, we'll dig a little bit deeper into your community foundation's data. You can bring up any questions you might be just kicking around internally, and we can look and see what data are most relevant to you all. We can provide a walkthrough for your entire staff, right? So, if you want us to join a staff meeting, or if there are only a handful of staff at the foundation who are interested in learning about it, yeah, happy to provide a personalized demonstration for anybody. And that even includes, anybody who's just kind of curious to learn more after this call. So if you joined us today, you're not a Plus member, you want to learn a little bit more and want to have a little bit more face time to ask any questions you have, then absolutely feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to set that up. All right, so I think looks like we may have answered all of the questions that we had. Just give it maybe a few more seconds in case anybody else has any other questions. Otherwise, I'll go back to this slide one more time with our email addresses. So yeah, absolutely feel free to reach out anytime with any questions that you might have. But if there are no more questions to answer right now, I think we'll go ahead and give everybody 4 minutes back. Thanks so much for joining, everybody. Hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.